Yeah, if we don't know anything, they won't take very long, will they? You can clip that for the advert.
Yeah. So we'll get on with it then. I know you've got your darts, Jamie.
Don't worry. We won last week, so things aren't so good this week.
Welcome back to the Apprentice 1-to-1 podcast. I am pleased to have Craig and Jamie with me again tonight. And it's been a couple of weeks since we've got a recording out. We have had the Easter break and we forgot to record on Monday as well. So apologies to those who have been waiting eagerly for us to pop back up onto YouTube again. Before we dig into this week's topic, how are you, Jamie? How are you doing?
Mark, have you fixed your sunbed? Or have you been outside?
I've been working outside on EV jobs, mate. My team have all been off on sick, so I've had to go out and do some work. So I've been out digging and pulling cables and all the normal stuff Sparkies do out in the sun.
Never mind. Yeah, I'm good, mate. Thanks for the invite again.
Pleasure to have you. How are you, Craig?
Thanks. It's strange times, isn't it? Like, going for paternity, back to my first day back in the college yesterday, so it's good to be back in work, but I'm shattered now.
Yeah, trying to find a routine to it all. That's the battle, isn't it, now?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we have got a bit of an interesting one for everybody. There's been a few people in this situation, and it's to do with resettlement. So for people who are coming from a forces or a services background to enter into the electrical industry, I don't know if it's just like my background from the industry I work in, but I seem to find a lot of sparks who have come from a military background in my network. So it does seem to be quite a common thing. And through doing Apprentice 1-to-1, there's been a lot of people asking questions of, you know, what's the right training? How can they transition over? And I know you two have got a little bit of experience on this kind of thing. So I thought we'd delve into it. Who wants to start us out?
I'll go, shall I? Because I like talking.
Because you've done it proper.
So I suppose the best way to go through this would be for my own experience, because I left the army in 2011. So when I left, I went through resettlement. I didn't use it to get Sparkies quals because, you know, I had them. But what I did use it for was the same process, because regardless of the qualification, it's still the same elements you go through. And some of this might have changed a little bit, but I think overall the process is the same. And I've got a few bits that I would advise people to be doing now. So generally, when you leave the forces, if you've got a minimum service, which I think used to be about 5 or 6 years, you were then entitled to resettlement upon leaving, which was money paid to you, well, paid straight to a training provider on your behalf to help you reskill and uptrain in qualifications of any industry, basically. Lots of people were obviously at the time, in 2011, construction and stuff was doing well, so everybody was leaving and becoming sparks or gas engineers or different other trades to give them job opportunities at that point. And the way it ended up working for me was you get 3 claims on enhanced learning credits, which the value to them, I'm sure, has changed. But at the time, I think each one of the claims was worth £2,000. So effectively, I had £6,000 to spend on retraining within a provider in a subject area that I wanted. So to do that, I had to go and source a course. I had to go and speak to the careers advisor in the learning hubs that we used to have on the bases to tell them what course I wanted to do. They then checked it all out. You then put an application in for your enhanced learning credits, and that was then paid direct to the training provider that you done the course on. So it's not physical money that you ever see or touch, but it covered the full cost of the 6-week. I'd done a personal training course at the time because I worked in the gym as a PTI. I got a full 6-week course in Hounslow paid for, which I didn't have to worry about and was covered for me.
Have you got to deal with all that organisation yourself, Craig?
You have to do a lot of it yourself.
You've got to do all the groundwork, haven't you?
You've got to find the courses, you've got to look at what you do, but you've got resettlement advisors on the military bases who can help you with this, who are there to do it. You also have LCAS itself, which has lots of information on there, and training providers that they have as approved providers based on subject areas to allow you to go and help and support you in that process. So you can you can sort it all yourself, but there are people there to help you at the same time going through that journey. And the admin side of it, basically, once I'd filled a form and then submitted it to basically the Army's HR or whatever, then they dealt with all the actual transition and payments and all of that sort of stuff. I wasn't involved past the point of applying to get the money.
So this is really interesting, because we're speaking just about the electrical side of things. People have kind of come to me from two different places, if you like. So there's some people who've got a little bit of what you might call technical experience. So they've maybe worked in comms in the Army or the RAF or whatever, but not been actual electricians. And then you've got people who have been in a services background in an electrician's role. So there's the kind of approach where somebody's coming at this industry wanting to get fully qualified from maybe not a standpoint of being qualified, if you like, and then other people who want to have what might be classed as civilian qualifications to work as electricians. So is there when you are in like the Army or the RAF, do you get the same qualifications as us, I guess, is the first question?
Well,
no was asked. Well, from my end, I say it's a no, is it not?
it changed.
Yeah.
So when I served, no, you got military equivalent qualifications on everything you done, which is why when I left, I had to get, as you say, my civilian version of the qualifications to go and do what I was going to do, because I was taking a break from trade for a few years. But now, if you go and do the job that I was doing and I joined today, you now come out with a HND in electrical engineering, you come out with HVAC qualifications, you come out with your 9-1, you come out with your regs, you come out with about 5 or 6 other different qualifications.
See, I'm not sure it's the same for all units, mate, if I'm honest. I'm sure people are correct. I just want to check, but I'm sure that's not the same for all units. So I think it varies across the Army, even then.
Well, now the Army are doing apprenticeships because it's paid for them to do apprenticeships, isn't it? So that's why the qualifications are now changing, because when you join the Army now, you now go on to a proper apprenticeship. When I joined, I did get an apprenticeship, but it was a bit of a, I never actually had to visit the college or anything. It was just built up over your trade training, because when you talk about people's careers, you effectively had 3 phases of training that you had to go through, and dependent on your time served, like you said, Mark, depended on how qualified and how far through that you got. So when you first finished your initial trade training, you were a class 3 operator, as we were called at the time. You went out onto base, and basically you were the electrician's mate of your deck or your comms kit or whatever you were working on, because we were doing sort of data and comms. And that meant that you had a corporal on your deck, because our decks were always 3-man wagons. And then your corporal was the one who was like the actual qualified person. So as you made your way through the ranks, you went back 18 months after your basic training, you done another 6 months and you got your class 2, and you were a little bit more qualified then. You were second in charge. Then after you'd served another few years, you went back and you'd done a year-long phase 1 training course, which meant you were in a class 1 trained instructor, and that was when you were the corporal on the deck and running the show sort of thing, and the one that was expected to know the ins and outs. So there was a staggered support system. So for people leaving, it really depends on where they are in that journey. But what I would say is now you get an apprenticeship that is recognised. Before we got an apprenticeship, well, I think there's a few military sparks I know who got all the way through what was the Army's apprenticeship, but they never actually got the final NVQ sign off because the Army doesn't need it.
Yeah, I think that might be what it is. And I think we're going to end up coming back to this, because I think we started this podcast now about this resettlement thing. And one thing I know is I think this will be the most feedback one we do, because military people aren't bothered about asking questions. So I expect to be corrected or pointed in the right direction at some point on this one, definitely.
Things that I didn't get when I was leaving, which I would advise anybody to do now, which I just didn't know at the time, is you're only allowed to do 1 enhanced learning credit claim per year. So if someone's thinking about leaving, and because when you leave, you have to give, or used to have to give 12 months notice to leave the Army, then they need to start spending some of that money on courses and stuff now, not wait until they start to make their way out. obviously you can time financial years sensibly by having one claim that's paid on the 31st of March and one claim that's paid on the 1st of April to give yourself £4,000 to do your courses, but you've still got another claim to use. So start planning your leaving of the forces in time that lets you start to build up your qualifications.
That's why I've got people at colleges. That's why I've got people at my college who are still in then. That's what I know that now. Yeah, right.
And the other thing that you don't often know about or people forget about is what's called standard learning credits. So everybody gets standard learning credits, not just if you're leaving, or at least you used to. They used to be about £180, I think. So again, if you're planning your leaving, be going and putting £180 of money towards a course to help you get something. You know, if you are a qualified spark and you've just paid £2,000 to do your NVQ for argument's sake, you might then want to go and do your EV charging course or something. There's £180 there to help you towards a cost of what's like a £400 course or whatever it might be. It's just planning your time sensibly and using the funding around. And the best people to go and ask is Careers Transition Partnership, they're called. If anybody Googles military resettlement, they're the first people that come up. And they approve all the providers for training. They have careers advisors. It's a civilian organisation, I think. So they have careers advisors who are there specifically to help the military into jobs upon leaving and help them with the qualifications and where to go. So there's a whole hub of information and resource on there, which should be your first point of call, in my opinion, because you're getting free advice who specialise in doing this that can direct you to how best to use your full range of money, because based on your service depends on how much you get.
Is there an argument to all this then that maybe short courses might be beneficial to people coming from a services background who are trying to get the civilian style qualifications? Could they be useful for them? I know we don't look on them very well as an industry for people entering with no electrical background, but could they be helpful from people coming from a military background who just want to have the actual civilian qualifications they need to get jobs?
Yes, it depends what they've done in the military.
Yeah,
I know Sparkies. I work with Sparkies in, got to be careful what I say, in regular units who, if they went in onto a normal site, they'd be useless. But what they do, they're very good. But the range is limited. They've been, I know the training school that the Royal Engineers use is very good. I've visited it. They've got a lot of really good facilities, but to actually get to use them in the real world when they're training, they might not get to do, but they probably know the groundwork. They just need to transition, I suppose, which is what it's all about.
The thing is, the military, and I can only talk about the army, but the army is built for purpose. So you are built and taught the things that you need for the army to function and the operations and environments that you need it to be able to function on. So if you're the kind of individual who's gone and spent, you know, let's say you've done 10 years in the army, you've gone through your different classes, you've done the different training, you've gone and read a bit outside of there, you've done a couple of civilian courses, you know, you've spent time upskilling yourself, then yeah, potentially there's an argument for a short course. If all you've done is done what the army tells you that you need to do for the job you're doing, I would say you need a bit more support. Having been somebody who's come from what is acceptable in the military to having to work out what's then acceptable in the real world outside of the bubble of the army is an interesting transition. And I cost myself my first couple of jobs learning that transition. So for me, there's an argument for and against in that question about short courses, and it really will depend on the individual. If someone's done the minimum time, they're a class 3 operator, they've only done it the way the army's told them to do it, that's great whilst you're in that bubble, but there are other things, you know, you're not necessarily sat in a forward operating base, you're putting in temporary comms and really paying that much attention to the regs other than is it up and working and getting the job done for what we need to be done. So yeah, it's
no, it makes sense what you're saying, that, you know, while you might have the technical ability, that it's difficult to actually drill down into to separate that apart. One of the people who asked the question, actually, they're saying they had the Defence Awarding Organisation level 3+4 in electrotechnical studies, and they've done like an 18th edition and the 2391 using their resettlement funds. But they're saying in like approaching industry now with that, employers are still looking for the city and guilds and the MVQ3. So they're unsure of kind of the route to go down, whether they should try some of these short course options to get qualified just to go and work for themselves, or if it's worth doing the NVQ. So I guess there's a couple of questions in that. One, is it worth doing the NVQ? And two, do you get time during the resettlement training program to go off and do that? Because obviously it takes quite a while.
For me, and this is the thing about the Defence Awards and the Army's apprenticeships and stuff, an old school money, not the new ones, because the new ones are properly accredited, is that the military qualifications to allow you to do the job the military needs you to do, which is why industry are having a little bit of pushback. It's not a knock or a slant on the individual's knowledge or skill. I'm sure they're more than capable, but it's that barrier of recognition. And it's one of the reasons I redone a load of my quals a few years ago, was because it's making sure you've always got that industry recognition, regardless of what you maybe do or don't know in the background with it. For me, I would do the NVQ, and I'd do the NVQ because it's currently funded under the adult skills budget. So why not? And when I was leaving, I can only talk from my personal experience, I was given 6 weeks to go and do a course. And then I was put on gardening leave from the November till the February, when I actually left on my last day to go away and get experience and work on that transition from military to civilian life. So it probably depends on your boss, and it depends on what you're doing and where you are. But I finished up in a selection centre where they were able to replace me quite easily for the next, guy coming in. So they just let me go and get myself sorted out for the final 3 months of my service.
That's really good, because that was one of the things I wondered, that if they would like release you from your day duties to go off and do this training. It sounds like that is the case. So it does make a lot of sense the way I'm looking at it, to try and get your MVQ done, especially if you can have all of that paid for. And then, like you said, top up with some of the other additional training to do with the current regs, your 2391 EV training, anything else that might help you as well. Maybe, I don't know, stuff like IPATH or some of the business management courses. There must be other options outside of just electrical quals that are going to give you some benefit.
And the Army do lots of free qualifications, or at least they used to. So, you used to be able to go and get your assessor's award for nothing if you've done it at the military's educational centre. Like,
I've done my teacher qualification with the Army. My teacher qualifications via the Army. There's loads of stuff out there. And I've got to say, sometimes, I'm sure Craig about my peer, some people don't extract out the Army what they can. And there's loads of good, they do, for people, slag people off and say jobs are crap and that, but there's a lot of free stuff out there. I did my teacher qualification with the Army. How much is the IT nowadays to get your Eng Tech and all that? It's like £200 a year, isn't it?
Quid, 200-300 quid if you want to go for
your 45 quid. I pay the Institute of Royal Engineers a yearly membership to keep that, which is great. So there's all these little things are normally buried. You have to do a bit of digging.
There's also now that the IET has started to recognise military leavers. I'm not able to do it because you've got to do it within a year of leaving. But if you do within a year of leaving and you tell them your trade, they automatically map your Eng Tech to your trade for military people as you leave. So, as I say, I'd have to go through the full process now and I'm lazy, but say I was leaving the Army tomorrow and I spoke to the IET and said, look, I've been doing this trade for 10 years. You don't have to submit a portfolio or folder or anything. They've got an agreement with the military that for each trade, it automatically gets this because they've been given all the details by the Army. So you'll get your Eng Tech based on your experience without having to do lots of the work to go and do it effectively. So it's worth looking at those avenues. And the things like assessors' quals and teachers' qualifications, you might never want to do it or you might never plan to do it, but I'm in education now and it was the last thing on my mind when I left the Army was to be in education. So whilst it's free and whilst it's there, for me, you're silly not to go and do it.
Yeah.
We all know there's lots of time dossing about on Army bases. You knock off at lunchtime on a Friday, you finish at 4 o'clock, you go and sit in your room or you go to the pub. Like, if you're leaving, maybe you need to do a little bit less pub and a little bit more thinking about.
Everyone's just an Xbox now, apparently. That's what I hear. Just Xboxing. But it's surprising that from 3 organisations, if you include the Air Force or whatever they're called, everyone's so different. It's like you think everybody get churned out, people just say, but they don't. in between units, a spark come out totally different to a spark that's gone through the signals, could be totally different to a spark that's gone through the Royal Engineers, something like. So it's all very individual, which is why I suspect there'll be a lot of comments on this.
Yeah.
Also, because that defines your scope of your works then, doesn't it? So for me, it was a lot of generators. We were in lorries that had TT earth rods going into the back, back of the hand test to check your lorry wasn't live before you went and set up camp inside it and whatever else, where the engineers are doing a bit more what we probably call generic Sparkian work. Like, yeah. So it's your scope of works, isn't it? Which is why it's about the short courses, what's right for some and not for others. Depends who you are and what you've done.
Yeah, I mean, some of the questions coming into Apprentice 1-to-1 with, like Jamie just said there, we'll get people from an Air Force background who have maybe been more in comms and radio frequency kind of stuff. And they want
the Air Force are going to rate me.
Yeah, for sure they will. But they kind of have a different background, a lot of them, to some people who may be coming from an army side of things where they've been electricians. And it is kind of trying to give people the right advice and the right training to point them at. And I know you've said that there is support within the military itself, but I'm just wondering if we do enough as trade to try and help those people come in, because often they make really good electricians. You've got those basic skills that a lot of like tradespeople need. You know, it's just understanding how that can be done in the civilian workplace, I guess.
The biggest battle is experience in a civilian world. And it's now impossible to get. You know, people are not willing to open up those doors and say, come and do a week with me, come and do, because they're getting paid most of the time. They'll get knocked off from camp to go and do a week if they've got a decent boss. They're not necessarily asking you to pay them. They're not necessarily wanting you to give them a job at the end of it. Just give them some time and exposure to get hands-on, because comms was part of my background. And when you do that, you're wiring three-phase cables, or you're wiring generators, or you're dealing with satellite communications. It's different wiring, but the basic principles are still there. So for those coming from the Air Force, they will still have 10, 12, 15, 20 years in some case of hand skills. Hand skills are hand skills at the end of the day. Like, they will come along and have a benefit to you. So for me, it's
too much innuendo in this podcast. Sorry. Hand skills for the Air Force. Jesus.
It is so true there. And I think maybe we should look at, I don't know if the ECA do something already, but I'm thinking of some of the industry bodies we have that could maybe help some people from a services background get that experience. Because a lot of the messages I do get where it'll say they've tried to reach out to employers to go and get a bit of experience, and they're saying they need to have the City and Guilds or their MVQ3, and it's just stuff that they don't have, and it takes time to get, and it kind of involves that process where they need the work experience to do the logbook, and it's that chicken and the egg thing.
If an employer's got this far, listen to this podcast, yeah, if you are turning down ex-forces personnel, even if they are from the Air Force, because they haven't got the experience, you're a moron, because these people have been fucked around by professionals, operate with crap tools in austere places, advanced, can make tea. So if you are turning them down because of experience and your employer, you're a moron, basically. I'll say it straight, yeah. You can't have it both ways, can you? These people will take it in, suck it in, and do as they're told. That's how they're trained to do. So don't look at it as a lack of experience. Look at it of all the other skills that these kind of people, even if they are from the Air Force, will provide you with.
Getting it in there about even from the Air Force as well. So
I can't remember what they call is it the Royal Air Force? Royal Air Force, something like that. That's what I think they're called now.
And for me, it's just about them gaining those valuable skills. It's about them gaining that experience. Maybe we need to speak to the JIB or something and see if there's some sort of ex-forces, labourers, site card or something that they can get whilst they gather experience. I know you can get apprentices cards now and you can get student cards. Maybe we need to do something with that. And along those lines, it might help them get on site for some of the experience they've already got.
Yeah, so in closing this one out then, what we're really saying as advice to people who are coming from that is it kind of really you need to focus in on getting your NVQ. As much as you might have already attained that in a military environment, is that going to be something that we're saying you really need if you want to come over and get a role as an electrician? So work on that as a priority.
I think if you never want to be questioned about your background and whether you have the access to get onto any of the environments, it's easier to do your NVQ to stop those questions. You'll spend more time explaining your military quals and experience than you will doing the NVQ.
And then to top that up in a supplementary way with all of the other short courses you can do in and around that. And yeah, that makes sense. And it's good to know that, as Craig said, you can get some funding to help pay for that. And outside of the military, there is funding as well, I think, for people to get, you know, we've had these discussions on social media over the last few weeks where you can get a lot of your level 3 training paid for anyway. So I assume that that would still apply to people from a military background as it would anyone else.
They're the same as anybody else in that regard. So you could be going to your local college a couple of evenings a week or whatever it might be, transferring your qualifications over, having your course paid for you whilst you're still serving and doing your day-to-day job. And that's what I mean about just planning your time a little bit before you go. If you know you've got at least a year to get out from the day you sign to say you're going to actually leaving, plan it a little bit and see how you can use that to your advantage.
Yeah. So my top tips to steal everyone else's before they get in there is to speak to the resettlement officers, as Craig has said, and make use of your funding for a longer period as you can before you leave, because you have earned it in the service you've given to your country. So make sure you take advantage of that. Is there anything you two want to add on this topic or speak about anything else while we're on?
I'll interject. I'm doing this shit in reverse because I was a Sparky and then I joined the army to be a Sparky as a reservist. So anyone that is leaving, I'm in at STRE with the Royal Engineers. I don't like to bang on about it because it just makes it look like a fat stab. But I'm in at STRE with the Royal Engineers. I want to take live work on the military estate all over the world as a reservist. So if you're getting out and you want to be a Sparky, if anyone I'm not banging on about it. If anyone contacts me directly, I'll give you the secret codes, let you know who's who. But I've had a better crack as an army Sparky than ever as a civilian one, and I've been everywhere from the Falklands, Germany, Cyprus, getting pissed up and fucking around with cables, basically. So if you do like a bit of that and you're getting out, there's not just civil training. We train regularly doing that. So yeah.
So you can go off and join up as a reservist and get involved with that kind of thing as well. Is that what you're saying, Jamie?
Well, specifically for electrical, that's what I do. That's what I do in the army. So yeah, so it's there. People maybe a retraining coming from the army. If you're in the army and you're retraining as a Sparker, that's there. If you carry on as a Sparker, that's there. It's an option. I know you hate us all because we're fat stabs, but yeah, it's good training and good experience and stuff. Helps you getting jobs. And there's a lot of I don't want to big them up with my watches, but a lot of power players in some of the STREs that work for some of the big electrical firms and stuff like that.
Okay, so top tip. And if anyone does want to ask any questions, myself, Craig and Jamie are on social media all the time. Our details will be in the link to this video and podcast as well. So reach out and ask. We don't mind. We're happy to help if we can. Anything else you two want to speak about before we end this one? I know Jamie's got to get off to darts, so we won't keep him too long.
I'm good. I think just take your time, think about it, and then you'll be good, and ask for help. Like, there's people out there who will.
Grand stuff. Thanks for both jumping on again, and we'll catch you all on the next one. We're going to try and get these back to a weekly release if we can, and we're going to get some apprentices on as well. We asked that on the Apprentice One-to-One Stories the other week. We've got a few people who want to come on and tell their stories and share their experiences, so we're going to get on with doing that over the next few weeks.
I've possibly got I've got someone who's going to be available in a month or so's time who's transitioned from the army to electrical and understands the UCAS system because they've worked with people. So if anyone has got any questions, don't generally on this one, don't hold them in. Ask them because I've got a good source of information. We could pop back to this one to answer those questions.
Definitely fire those questions over, and we'll come back to this if people want to hear more about it. Always happy to do so. Thank you again, everybody, and we will see you on the next episode of the Apprentice One-to-One podcast.
Take care. Bye.